This is a project I've been working on for a while at BYU, is trying to figure out how to bring the best of social media and Web 2.0 tools into the IT mix. We run Blackboard, we have 45,000 users, it's used very heavily. We've got 4,000 courses a semester, we run 2 million quizzes a semester in Blackboard. It's not, oh, I'm sorry, I need my So Blackboard isn't something that we can take lightly because it's so entrenched at our institution. So as we think about, well, as we see all of these really exciting things happening with more and more of our faculty members using blogs and wikis and other kinds of tools to interact with their students, how do we bridge the gap between what's going on there and what's going on in our learning management system, course management system? So part of what I want to talk about today is maybe some of the conceptual or theoretical kind of philosophical background behind this whole question, and then toward the end I'll show you some specific technological things we're trying to do to actually bridge the gap. So I started off by saying, well, what is the allure of the CMS? Why have so many institutions adopted and implemented and spent so much money on course management systems? And I thought of this picture. Not sure why, but it just seemed appropriate. I think the real issue, if you're a CIO or a tech person, when you think about the CMS, you're thinking about how do I put the simplest stack of tools in place that will meet the needs of the majority of my students and faculty members. And so you say, well, what can I get that's sort of easy to implement, prefab, it's going to be scalable, not going to cause me a lot of problems. So we get these kinds of solutions. I don't know if you want to think of these houses as separate installations of a course management system, or maybe they're courses within it. But in either case, you get a pretty homogeneous approach to your teaching and learning technology. It's scalable, it works, it's fine, but there's not a lot of variety or opportunity for creativity. And if you saw Dave Cormier's presentation yesterday, I just noticed this as I was looking at it this morning. There's a little X on these people hugging. So apparently in the course management system, PDA is not allowed. We can go with the free CMS route if we're still using the house metaphor. Sometimes it's a fixer-upper. And in either case, it's going to cost us a lot in terms of infrastructure to make it work, to make it scale, to have a reliable system. So the allure, again, coming back to kind of the CIO mentality, I think one of the things that folks that are in the open kind of milieu have to think about and remember is that, and maybe we're painfully aware of this reality, is that we're not the ones oftentimes who are making the decisions about what technology we provide and implement for our faculty members and students. It's the CIO and the president and the provost who are looking at it from the perspective of reliability and scalability and cost and so forth. So the picture to them probably looks something like this. And I call this the case for and against the CMS. There's a vertical stack of technology that provides all of the tools that a faculty member and a student might need in one convenient package, and it's integrated with their student information system, so that's kind of a nice thing for them. And then as they have external applications, in many instances there are APIs that they can just integrate those with the CMS. But here's where it starts to get a little complicated. Let's say there's not an API, or the API doesn't work for the tool you want to integrate with. Then you get into a customization project. Sometimes those are expensive, sometimes the customizations, the integrations are brittle. And then we have redundant applications, things that are better than the native applications inside the CMS that faculty members start using. They're not integrated, and we're kind of out of this convenience one-stop shop approach that maybe was the allure or the draw to get into the CMS in the first place. So enter the PLE. I as advertised, wanted to go through just quickly a few visualizations of PLEs. I don't have time to dissect these. I just want you to get a sense that there are a lot of people thinking about what a PLE looks like, how it functions, how it may or may not interact with the CMS. So here's Jared Stein, our convener. This is his model of a PLE. Jared, you want to take 20 minutes and describe this? No, I'm kidding. Here's Stevens. I don't know if this is an old one of yours or a new one.
It's a little old.
Yeah. Pulled it off Scott Leslie's collection of PLEs. Here's Martin Weller's. Here's one from Darcy Norman. Here's Scott Leslie's. Here's one from yesterday. Dave showed this, but I think it's Alec Kouros's. But this is my favorite one. This is Alan Levine's visualization of a PLE, just the cloud. But I think as you go back and you think through those that I just ran through really quickly, the issue is changing the center of focus from the institution and the teacher to the student. And what is the learner doing? What are they creating? How are they interacting with what they create with other learners? How are they collaborating and co-creating with others in this process of becoming something that they weren't before they came into our tutelage? So let's set that aside for just a minute. I'm going to come back to that theme. But another allure of the PLE or of PLE tools is that they are radically simple. Let me tell you a little story. When we were in the midst of our accreditation process a few years ago, I got pulled into a meeting by the assistant to the president who was over the accreditation effort. And he was having a conversation with the CIO about how we were going to manage all of the information about our 407 academic programs at BYU. And one of the requirements we had in the accreditation process was to document all of those publicly. Well, we had an existing license for Documentum, which is pretty heavy iron, complicated to manage, hard to teach faculty members how to use. But we had set aside quite a bit of money to get that up and running and to teach faculty members how to use it and to port our content over from a static website, and that was our strategy. And I raised my hand and I said, well, how about if we use MediaWiki and we can have it up in a day or two? And that's what we did. So if you go to learningoutcomes.byu.edu, we have all 407 programs documented publicly. Virtually every student at BYU has visited this site at least once. We have, I think, 600 faculty editors that have collaboratively come in and edited this, and they continue to do that as their programs change. So a radically simple, cheap solution was actually superior to something that was a lot more complicated. And I think as we look at PLEs, we often see the same kind of thing. I'm glad Jim came in because he's about to become the center of attention. There was a story in the Chronicle a while back about the meltdown of Blackboard at CUNY, and I'm not going to go into why they had the issues with Blackboard that they did. But as that happened, faculty members were unable to communicate with their students to share information about the course, etc. So a lot of them started using WordPress. It was a radically simple solution that replaced something that was very complex. Now, this is kind of a teaser for something that's coming later in my talk, but at the end of this article, they interviewed Michael Chasen, and they said, well, why can't people just give up Blackboard and go use a blog? And he said, well, they don't have a lot of the functionality in a blog that we have in Blackboard, things like a gradebook. That's something I'll come back to. So, as you kind of lay out what's the difference between the CMS and the PLE, if the CMS is focused on courses, semesters, institutions, it's a closed environment, it's integrated vertically, and it's proprietary, then the PLE is the opposite of all of those. And this isn't anything new to all of you, but as I kind of lay out this argument for folks at our campus about why we should be thinking about this, this is a critical kind of chain of reasoning to go through and say, okay, if these are our goals, the stuff on the left side, right side, sorry, is more consistent with our institutional mission and our goals and what we want to help our learners become, then we shouldn't just continue with the inertia of our chosen path. We should think about, well, what's it going to take to get us more over to this right column instead of staying in the left column perpetually. Now, one thing, recently a colleague and I wrote a paper in educational technology, and we highlighted this notion of open, modular, and interoperable in terms of the technology platform that you want to implement. And we gave that, that's a typo, that should say malleability. we gave those 3 words the heading of malleability. So if something is open, modular, and interoperable, it becomes malleable. And what we want in terms of the learning network for our students is something that's malleable, so it's not locked down and rigid and unchangeable, but something that can adapt and change as needs change. Well, there's an interesting conversation going on in the blogosphere right now. People saying, well, the CMS isn't dead yet. Don't say goodbye to it quite yet. There's still a lot of value in the CMS, and I would agree with that. If you go back and think about what the CIO and the institutional motivations are for implementing a CMS, those are things that aren't going to go away immediately. If I went to my CIO and said, shut off Blackboard and we're going to do WordPress tomorrow, he would have all sorts of questions and concerns about that. Things about privacy and simplicity and scalability and all that. And I think those are valid issues that we need to continue to consider. But I keep coming back to what are those right column goals and how are we getting there? And let's not let the technology thwart our efforts to get there. Again, as I thought about the CMS not being dead yet, I'm not sure why this image came to mind, but this is the scene from Monty Python. Not dead yet. Okay, so what are the forces of inertia that we have to try to overcome? We have big classes at our institution. I don't know if you have big classes at your institution, but as professors try to manage hundreds of students in a single section, a course management system is very apropos. I mean, it's in the title. They're managing their course. And that's something that we need to try to figure out. How do we help instructors manage large groups of students, or rather guide large groups of students through a learning process, changing that verb from manage to guide? And how do we then say, well, maybe there's a different tool set that you need to do that rather than just doing the administrivia kind of stuff. We also have faculty members who are preoccupied. They have other things to do. And so the CMS is an easy way for them to, again, manage the work that's associated with their course. And we need to think about, well, those are real concerns. How do we help them get over that hurdle and start doing their work differently in a way that still allows them to pay attention to the other concerns and needs that they have? Dave Wiley mentioned this one yesterday. That's a stack of applications for a job, by the way. Corporations, businesses look to us as institutions and they say, we want you to credential people so that we can decide who to hire. That's a huge dilemma, a problem that we have to think about. If we're taking students under our wings and then providing them a learning experience, we give them something that has economic value. It's a diploma and a transcript with a GPA and a list of courses. We need to continue to provide something like that, maybe not the exact same thing, but something that they can take that has economic value and that helps employers sort them out and decide who to hire and who not to hire. So again, this is one of the sources of inertia that's keeping us where we are. I talked about the administrivia stuff. This is a survey that's a compilation of data from 5 years of Blackboard use at BYU. We have about 2/3 of all sections in our course schedule every semester that are in Blackboard. So this represents thousands and thousands of courses, thousands of teachers, thousands of students. Yeah?
The survey, that's out of the system.
Well, this is a survey. So at the end of every semester, we send a survey to faculty members and we say, what tools did you use this semester? Which ones were most important to you? And we ask the same thing of students. Afterward, we can talk about how hard it is to actually get this data out of Blackboard. So that's why we do a survey. Just easier. But as you look at this list, you'll notice what are people doing in Blackboard in the course management system. They're sharing documents, they run the gradebook, they do announcements, they do email. It's not till you get down to assessments and quizzes that it looks like they're doing some real teaching and learning kinds of things, and then it drops off pretty fast. So primarily what's going on in the course management system is administrivia. Well, what are the forces of change? Dan Gilmore has talked about how bloggers are the former audience. They're becoming the journalists. Well, our students, in many ways, are the former audience. I think many of you have seen this picture. The people who went to see Obama in Berlin weren't just passive participants. They were documenting the event. They were uploading their pictures to Flickr. They were blogging about it. They're the former audience. I like this from my Russian's not very good, Bakhtin. Meaning only comes into existence when two or more voices come into contact. I think increasingly our students are saying, okay, I can sit and passively listen to a lecture, but it doesn't really have meaning to me until I engage with another student about it, or I write something and somebody responds to it and I respond to what they wrote. So increasingly, I think our students who are getting engaged in these online conversations are saying, wow, this is more meaningful to me. This has more value to me than just going and listening to a passive lecture. I think we've all seen a slide similar to this lots and lots of times, but the point is our students are swimming in data, swimming in knowledge, swimming in information. What we need to start doing is not just giving them more information, but helping them make sense out of it. I recently talked to a chemistry faculty member at BYU who's been teaching for 30 years, and he said, you know, it finally dawned on me, he said, I'm a little slow learner, but I just figured out that after 30 years I should have been uncovering the content instead of trying to cover it. So I think there's an interesting message there that we need to be thinking about what it is that we're actually sending our students forward with when they leave us. Our university president recently said that because we screen our students so rigorously, they're pretty darn good. And if we don't kill them during the 4 years that they're at BYU, they're probably going to go out into the world and be successful. So what value are we adding? If we're just adding to this fire hydrant stream, that's almost worthless. Vygotsky, higher mental functioning in the individual derives from social life. I think we're increasingly coming to the realization that students can't just be passive recipients of information if we want them to be productive members of society, to participate in the kinds of conversations that will matter to them. But institutions don't deal with this very well. I don't know if you saw the story from Ryerson where a student created a Facebook study group and they said, wow, that's cheating. You're sharing information with other students online. That's against our academic dishonesty policy. We're going to kick you out. And he said, well, that's no different than what we do when we go to a tutoring lab. What's wrong with doing it online? There's a mindset that needs to start changing here. I borrowed this a little bit from Dave Wiley. He said, if Facebook acted like a course management system, it would be a little kind of funny to us. If this is Facebook, this is my Facebook profile. This is Facebook on Blackboard. and let me tell you why. Because what happens every semester is, if this is my learning network and this is time, every semester I build a learning network with my fellow students for 14 weeks. And then this funny thing happens at the end of the semester, and they delete all my courses, and it's as if I never existed. And that happens over and over again. But if you're building your own PLE, there is some durability. There is some life of your learning network beyond the end of the semester. This, in my mind, is the chief demerit of the course management system, is that it puts students into 14-week units of time that are completely arbitrary, and then at the end of those periods of time we say, you don't exist anymore, start over from scratch. And not only do we do that, but we even have more discrete units than that. We put them in sections inside those 14-week periods, and those don't get to talk to each other. So Gardner likes to talk about digital prints, leaving our mark behind. We do this because we want to have some sense of ownership in a public space. Well, if we're deleting everybody's contacts and pictures and access to content every 14 weeks, we're disenfranchising our students from their own learning experiences. We're building bridges to nowhere. This is an interesting little picture I took in my basement the other day. This is my son and 4 of his friends. I don't know if you've ever seen this happen. They brought 5 TVs, 5 video game consoles, and they all started the same game at the same time, and they were having a race. 99% of teenage boys play video games. 95% of girls do. There's something that they're looking for, and most of that video game playing happens in groups like this. This is maybe an extreme example. We only let them do this about once a month. But there's some sort of connection to others that they're looking for. They're dying for us to challenge them. I think sometimes we think we expect too much of our students. I think we actually expect too little. They're hungry for engagement. We need to provide it for them. We can't have any more dead ends, exits that go nowhere. There's an actual road sign in southern Utah. Had to take a picture of it. Just metaphors galore. No more moated castles. No more walled gardens. We have to open things up. In the process of just distributing content within these walled gardens, moated castles, we continue to reinvent the past. And sometimes if you actually put the new form factor into the old form factor, it reminds you of how ridiculous it is. Just doesn't make sense anymore. There's a new form factor that's vastly superior. Why would we go back to the old one? Our institutions are becoming more permeable, which is driving this change. As we think about what's happening to our institutions, they're becoming permeable, but our learning networks are not. So why the disconnect? Why aren't we allowing that to happen? If our academic communities are becoming more collaborative and open and permeable, why aren't we moving to that right column? That's where we need to get. If this is the old landscape, the new landscape looks like this. Our borders are permeable, and now there's interaction with all sorts of other tools, entities, organizations. And whether we like it or not, the walls are going to come down. So it's time for us to get on the Clue Train Express. I don't know if you remember in 1999, the Clue Train Manifesto, they said networked markets are beginning to self-organize faster than the companies that have traditionally served them. Thanks to the web, markets are becoming better informed, smarter, and more demanding of qualities missing from most business organizations. 10 years later, we can still say the same about what's happening in our space. Network learners are beginning to self-organize faster than the schools that have traditionally served them. Thanks to the web, learners. Thanks to the web, learners are becoming better informed, smarter, and more demanding of the qualities missing from most educational institutions. Okay, so that's all preamble. Now what we want to know is is in 1999, is it the end of learning as usual? If that was the manifesto that declared business can't operate the same way, 10 years later, are we in the same boat? And the real question is, can these two guys get along? Can we find a happy medium between the EduPunk community and the CMS community, or rather the values of each? Is it going to be a push me, pull you? Are we always just going to be, is there always going to be this tension where we're just at each other's throats, or can we come up with something really awesome that's a hybrid between the two? Well, again, why do we want to change? Because meaning equals use. Interesting conversation yesterday where, or was that 2 days ago, where David and Stephen talked about how we give access, and there was some debate back and forth about how filtered that access ought to be. Maybe it should be completely unfiltered. I think that was an interesting theme in our keynote this morning. But the bottom line is, I think we need more unfiltered access and more filtered access where we, as those who supposedly know something in a field, continue to try to guide those through it, sort of the DJ as curator. I like that model. By the way, I couldn't resist just saying, if you average these two haircuts, you get this. It's time to leverage the architecture of participation. Shirky talks about now with everybody being a publisher, everybody being to participate, what we need to think about in organizations is what we're doing to help people move from consumption to sharing to cooperation and collaboration to collective action. It's not enough just to give bubble sheets anymore. If we continue to persist in this behavior, our students will find something better to do with the bubble sheets. It's not just about graduation. I think you saw this the other day. Sometimes graduating isn't enough. If it's just about a degree, we have competition. I didn't rig that. That just came up when I looked up the story. If it's just about jobs, people can go find jobs. But I think what we're really interested in is helping them make a difference in the world, having a life that's meaningful to them, maybe touching 47 million people's lives. We need to start thinking about what's going on in their brains as we try to help them through this process. If they're unengaged, maybe that's our fault. Maybe we should quit telling them to power down. They'll just find ways to get around that. If we did manage to get all the technology out of the classroom, they'd find other things to occupy themselves. You remember low-tech texting? So I'll leave it to the king to say, suspicion isn't going to get us anywhere. We have to figure out how to start working together more effectively. Yesterday, Chris Lott said maybe we need to give students open candy to entice them into openness. I think there are ways that we can draw students in, but it's not a trick. We need to say, okay, we want to start focusing our attention as educators on being more authentic in the things we teach you, the things we ask you to do. The activities need to be more authentic. David Merrill gave a talk at BYU a couple weeks ago, and he was disparaging all of these gimmicks, these games that people are creating. I'm sorry if I'm offending any of you. You know, you create a game where you go in a submarine around the world to learn math. Well, why not just teach math and help the students realize how important it is for them to know math by showing them real-world examples of how math is going to help their lives be better? Need to make it more authentic. And then when we measure and hold them accountable for what we've asked them to do, it's more meaningful and authentic. So how do we get unstuck from this technology mud pit? Here's what we're doing, and I'm going to have to go through this fast, but as we've looked at this divide between the CMS and the PLE, we've said, okay, we have a university network. We have some moral, ethical, legal obligations to keep certain things secure. So we have our student information system, we have student gradebook data, we have a learning outcomes server, we have assessment tools. Those things need to be secure within our network framework. But there are lots of things that can happen in the cloud that don't need quite that level of security. We can have personal publishing tools, portfolios for students. As I'll show you in a minute, maybe that bridges the gap a little bit. Social networking apps, collaboration tools, and then content can exist all over the place. And then what we just need is a way to aggregate that and publish it for students and teachers in spaces where they can collaborate around it. So again, coming back to this notion of malleability, I spelled it right this time. We want a system that's open, modular, and interoperable. And again, let's try a radically simple idea. Gary Brown and his colleagues at Washington State are talking about a standalone gradebook. They're calling it a harvesting gradebook. We're talking about something that's very similar, but the term we're using is a loosely coupled gradebook. So what this would look like, this is a mock-up of an app that we're building in partnership with a company that's 20 miles away from us called Agilix. Mark L., are you here? Mark is from Agilix. He's presenting next hour. If you want to learn more about their product, go listen to him. It's pretty cool stuff. But we're working with them to pull their gradebook out of their course management system and have a standalone gradebook that isn't hardwired to anything else. And then what happens is, as an instructor creates a course in the gradebook, it pulls in the roster. The instructor can create an assignment, but a different kind of an assignment. What the instructor now tells the students to do is, don't upload your paper, just give me the URL for where it lives on the web. Maybe maybe one of the requirements of being digitally literate in 2009 is knowing how to publish a web viewable document. So for many assignments, we can say, just put it on the web, tell me where it lives, and then I can use this interface to score it with a rubric. I can record voice feedback, and the student can get it. But the interface that we're really excited about is if I go into grade mode, now I have just a little frame at the top. It tells me who I am, who the student is, what the assignment is. I've got drop downs over here for my rubric, for audio feedback, etc. And whatever the student submitted and is visible at the URL they gave me, I see in the frame below. I give it the feedback, and then I go to the next one. So is this more authentic? We have students who in the process of learning create stuff. They publish it to the web. They tell me where it lives. I have a quick interface. I give it some assessment data, whether that's a rubric or some audio feedback or whatever. Then I have an assessment scores repository, and I can do reports out of that. So I can now teach with a blog or a wiki, and my gradebook is integrated with my SIS, and I don't have to worry about all of the other stuff. Well, this works pretty well for portfolio assessment too. Now instead of a course gradebook, I create a program gradebook, and now the assignment is give me your portfolio, tell me where it lives. So now I've got a portfolio that's been uploaded, and I can give it the same kind of feedback that I gave, but probably more verbose and related to program goals instead of course goals. And the same process works. Tell me where it lives. I evaluate it. I have a portfolio assessment repository. And again, I can do reports. So from an integrated standpoint, we have student learning activity. They're producing artifacts. They're publishing them online. They're telling us where they live. One thing that we've included in this now as an artifact repository, sometimes we need to grab those artifacts at a point in time so we know how the student performed either at the beginning or the end of a program. I can talk more about that later if any of you are interested in why we've decided to do that. But now from a program evaluation standpoint, faculty members can define the goals for their programs. They can integrate that with the interface that they use to evaluate what the students submit. And again, we have this assessment scores repository with a reporting interface, and that can loop back into our accreditation process. And it's all very lightweight. Now let me show you some of the technology that's under the hood here. Just so you don't think this is too easy, we've spent a lot of money the last few years on a web services infrastructure so that we can have these standalone applications that have a web services interface that all know how to talk to each other through the web service standards that we've implemented. So we have our student information system, we have web-based apps, we have our portal, which we call Route Y. We have our library, of the testing center where we do proctored exams. We have various content stores both on and off campus. We have our Learning Outcomes Wiki. We've got the gradebook in the middle. Various ways to publish course sites, loosely defined. And then you put a service layer on top of all of those, and they can all communicate with each other. There's actually not enough arrows here, but you get the idea. So let me show you a real live example of this. I looked at this morning. We have a little tool that our Center for Teaching and Learning has built called the Syllabus Builder. And using web services, they've actually pulled in the program objectives from our Learning Outcomes Wiki, so I can put those right in my syllabus and tie them to the assignments that I create. And when they publish this syllabus, it will actually populate the gradebook we're building with the assignments that they built in their Syllabus Builder. The point of all of this is it's very loosely structured. None of these things are integrated. No faculty member has to use any or all of them. They can use whichever tools they want in any combination they want to meet the needs in their course. Just to give you an idea of where we're heading, we're doing the same thing with content. There's a lot of content that we have at the university that's licensed that we can't share with the world, so we need a way to help faculty members find that and then put it into their courses. Well, we already have an interface for that in the library. So the library is just going to, with a web service, provide a way to search all content that a faculty member might want to have access to in their course, whether it's licensed or opened or contributed by other faculty members to share within the institution. We'll use the same search, and then they can integrate it with either an embed tag, or if it's required that you, so as you do the search, you'd get this get it button or link on every artifact or every item that comes up in your search. And if it's proprietary content, through a web service, we would just say, well, authenticate and tell us where you want to put it. Do you want to put it in Blackboard? Do you want to put it in Moodle? Do you want to put it in uPortal? We're working on a Google Apps for Education integration. Maybe you want to put it there, but that way you can provide it to all of the students in your course in a way that's secure and not shared with the whole world. Okay, so let's go back to 1999. The authors of the Clue Train quoted a veteran of a firm now free falling out of the Fortune 500. He said the Clue Train stopped there 4 times a day for 10 years and they never took delivery. I wonder if we can say that about any of us at our institutions. Is the Clue Train stopping by and we're just not catching on? If you remember that slide I showed you at the beginning about if the CMS is about courses and about institutions and about what teachers do, we want to be moving toward what learners do and how they interact in community and what they create, and what artifacts or what evidence of that persists after courses are over. What persists, what they continue to build in a lifelong learning fashion after they leave our institutions. How do we get there? The Clue Train whistle's blowing. There was another guy who started a revolution in about 1517 with 95 theses. The Clue Train people also, not coincidentally, published 95 theses. One of them is one of the most simple realities of our day, but something that I don't think we've quite grasped the magnitude of yet. The internet is enabling conversations among human beings, among our students, that were simply not possible before. Now that they're possible, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to leverage that to make the world a better place for our students, to help them become more than they could have become before? So I close with this thought. If we don't know where we want them to get, if we don't know what we want them to become, it doesn't matter what we do. But if we have a vision of students who are self-motivated learners, who know how to not just find information, but to make sense out of it, and to make cogent arguments, to participate in communities, to add value to those communities, then I think we have a path that we can start moving down in terms of the technology that we provide them to do those things as they interact with each other and their teachers while they're at our institutions. Thank you very much.
Let's open it up for some questions, and John, if you don't mind repeating the question in brief before you answer,
sure.
That'll help with the recordings.
Okay. Any questions? Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about the just tell me where it is part?
Just tell me where it is. Oh, so like the students are saying, just tell me where to find it?
No, the professor or the teacher is saying,
Gotcha.
tell me where it is and how do I manage?
Yeah, so I didn't lay this out in detail, but we have this strategy where we're building a grade book this year. Next year we're doing content management. The year after that we're doing secure online assessment. And we're trying to have, behind the scenes, glue all of those things together. But for the professor who says, just tell me where it is, we need to approximate the simplicity that we have in a course management system today, so that there's one place they can go and easily see the tools that are available to them. Their course lists are already populated through an integration with the student information system, and they're just ready to go. They're in business. But underneath that, there's the flexibility for those who want to do things differently than maybe they have in the past. I hope that answers your question.
Not totally. I'm just wondering.
So if I said it another way, we're figuring it out. Yeah.
So are you still running Blackboard?
Yes. And we will be for the foreseeable future. We have not announced that we're getting rid of Blackboard, that we're leaving Blackboard. That's not part of our roadmap. We have 30% of our faculty members who don't use Blackboard. Of those, 25% have their own blog or wiki or something else that they do. That's the first target audience. How can we provide them with an integration with the student information system so they get the benefit of having course lists populated and being able to post grades back, et cetera?
I need to ask the money question.
Yep.
How do you sustain this over time? Basically running multiple.
Yep. So the conversation we're having with Blackboard, and we have some folks coming out in a couple weeks so we can do some whiteboarding on this, is we want to know if we quit using the Blackboard gradebook, can we quit paying for that part of the product? Can they start modularizing their license in their product? I don't know if that's possible, if it's in their DNA or not, but those are the conversations we need to have. And we also need to start thinking about, because you're right, for a while, we're going to be paying more than the baseline. That's not sustainable, especially in the current economic climate. So if we're starting to add products, we need to figure out, well, how do the other ones taper off? How do we make that balance? Yeah, go ahead.
Just wondering how much research you've been doing around, I know you had some good data there about how faculty are actually using Blackboard, but it seems to me so much of what we're doing is we're trying to guess at what people need, and we're trying to say, well, what if we give them this, how will they use it? Rather than going back to the users and saying, what are you really doing, where do you want to go with your teaching practice?
Yep.
And then how can we support you?
Yeah, we've actually been having lots of conversations with faculty members, not just the surveys, but in various committees around this and informal conversations. And again, targeting those 30% first. If you've read Clayton Christensen talk about disruptive innovation, you go after the non-consumers first. If we said, we're going to go try to convert all these people who use Blackboard into something that's more complicated and confusing and not one-stop shopping, probably a non-starter. But we've got this group who we think are ready and willing and able, and so that's where we're going to start. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to get back to your example for a moment about the teenage boys. I have an almost
Yeah.
teenage boy myself, and we were sitting around with his friends at lunch one day, and I asked him that question, why do you like video games so much? I was assuming the same thing that you talked about was something about engagement and interaction. Wasn't that? It was power.
Hmm.
We talked about power, and that made me really think about, sometimes we assume the goals of the learners rather than really helping them identify for themselves what their own goals are and how to pick and choose some of the 2.0 tools or
Yeah.
whatever will help them achieve their own goals. And until we get there, I don't think we've really got it.
Just realized I haven't been repeating questions, but your question is about, are we assuming too much about the learner's motivations? Do my son and his friends really care about interacting with each other, or is it just about the power rush that comes from beating the boss in the game?
Why aren't we helping the learners get a little bit better, a little bit more challenging for identifying their own goals?
Yep. So that whole notion of not only metacognition, but maybe meta goal analysis. Why am I doing what I'm doing, and what value does it serve me? I think that's a great idea, great thought. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, actually connects to what Cindy was just saying around powering, and I really like the way you've been discussing what the needs are of your faculty, people that you're working with. I've just been working with our community service learning group here at UBC, and we've been doing a lot of participatory design in the precursor planning period with how do we develop sites that work for the people who are going to use them. And it's so much more time of just listening.
Yeah.
So much more listening and asking questions that we don't know the answers to, and making pacts amongst ourselves as techie people to say, we will not force technology
Yeah.
first. Like, we will not do it. We will not say any techie terms until maybe 2 weeks, 4 weeks into the project.
Yeah. Goal first, strategy, then you start talking specific tactics, right?
Yeah, and I guess that sort of connects to what Cindy's saying.
Yep.
That we really need to listen to what people need and to help
Yeah.
them to critically analyze why they want something, and if that's we're lucky to work in academia because we get to work on critical thinking.
Yeah. So I came back the last question. What do we want them to become? What do they want to become?
Yeah.
Somebody yesterday talked about hudagogy. Is there something about self-directed learning? And are we tapping into that enough in our students? I did a graduate seminar last semester where the first day we wrote the syllabus. I said, I have some things I think you should know, but what do you want to know? And what activities should we have in this class to get there? I don't know how I would scale that in a class of 200. But and maybe it's not appropriate in an entry-level course, and that's another conversation to have.
Let's just take a couple more.
Okay. Yeah.
And along those lines, I think one of the things we've got to be preparing for is folks that are coming in, that are going to be coming in with lifelong domains already established and identities established.
Yep.
And education, we're going to have to adapt to that.
Oh, absolutely.
Otherwise, some other educational business will adapt to that, and that's where they'll go.
Yeah, I've tried to teach courses like this that are more interactive and participatory, and typically on my evaluations I get U-shaped curves. Half love it, half hate it. And the half that hate it, they're like, just teach me. You know, they wanted me to teach them what was in the book. Yeah.
So you talked about the syllabus builder you had.
Mm-hmm.
Does that actually, is the concept behind that you've got the goals and everything in the course is mapped back into that, so the student could perhaps get a picture of how all of these assignments, et cetera, link into their final grade?
Yes, that's exactly the idea in the context of a course. In the context of a program, we're hoping to actually create a competency transcript. So it'll say, well, here were the program objectives, here were the assignments that the faculty members attached to those assignments, and here were your evaluations. And it's actually going to force faculty members to think about what assignments they create and how they associate them with those goals, because if it doesn't make sense on the face of it, they're going to look silly.
So, because it reminds me a little bit of Catherine, the teacher education portfolio in some ways.
Well, it's interesting actually.
Yeah.
Andre just sent a tweet about that, right? That we actually have this education program where students are collecting all their work and evidence of how they meet professional
Yep.
standards, and they need to show that to a professional accreditation body, and the school, university needs to keep a copy of it. But because they're using it as a blog, they want to keep using it, right? They want to take it away. So what we did was we have pushed WordPress to be able to beyond the edge. And so what we have done is created a sort of a script, and Andre and a few of our other students have worked to create this. And what we do is we go in and we run a script that goes in and makes a copy of every attachment. And
So you're harvesting these blog-based portfolios so you have an institutional copy. Yeah. And we're anticipating doing something similar because we're expecting students to publish work on the web, and it could be a whole website. How do we archive that?
That's
Yeah.
exactly it. Like the evidence, you need the evidence.
Yep.
And it's difficult too. And so what we've done is we've used tagging to do that, to identify the post. So once something is tagged with the word audit,
Yeah.
the script grabs anything that's tagged. Interestingly, if the word is audit, like uppercase A, it doesn't work. You have to tell lowercase a, and you have to say the
Yeah, so we have to work through all these technology quirks as we do this.
I mean, for me, what that's doing is talking a little bit about the flip side of this, which is you're talking about the faculty and the student, but the institution has all this regulatory stuff.
Yeah.
So if your students' papers are out on the web and you're not keeping a copy and they challenge their grade 2 years down the line, what happens?
Yeah, there are lots of issues we've got to work through. I think we're over time. I'll be happy to chat with whoever out in the hall wants to chat, but I think we probably ought to let the next group come in. Thank you very much.